Because Capital Ford is celebrating 60 years in business, we're holding a very special signature sales event where we're rolling out our strongest offers of the year on every new Ford car, truck, and SUV in stock, like a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Lease today for just $399 a month or 0% APR for 60 months, plus no payments for 90 days on a new 2025 Ford F-150. But hurry, this signature sales event is for a limited time at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Good evening and welcome to the Pit Press Live. I'm your host, Ed. For this evening, Ed Nunez. Our producer is Eric Moulton. And joining me, as he always does when we break down UNM football, is Pit Press beat writer, former Albuquerque Journal, Albuquerque Journal football beat writer, Greg Archuleta. Greg, you and I are both at the press conference this afternoon about 12:30. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed. How's it going tonight?
You know, Greg, I think New Mexico victorious over Air Force 20-3 on Saturday. First win in Falcon Stadium in 25 years, since 2000. And you and I had expressed, the Lobos have had a problem with the triple option attack every time they played. Really Air Force has gotten the best of New Mexico for a long time, on the road, especially at Falcon Stadium. But I thought UNM came out the first half. They outgained Air Force 188-44 in the first half. I thought they did a good job of setting the edge as far as getting upfield and making the Air Force quarterback, who was their fullback, make some reads that they probably didn't want to. And I thought they did a good job of controlling the line of scrimmage in the first half. What did you see?
Well, yeah, and I think something that helped UNM was the fact that the Air Force lost its quarterback, Zarka, I think his name was, in the Yukon game, the game before. And so Hodges, you could see he was a load as a runner, but when you saw him go back to pass, wasn't really accurate. So I think the Lobos could kind of key in on defending the run and not worrying too much about the pass. And so I think that kind of helped their game plan along. And you saw when they took Air Force took Hodges out in favor, I think it was Josh Johnson. They had a little bit more success moving the ball a little bit. Didn't translate into scoring, but that was because they were down 14, 17 points and trying to get touchdowns instead of field goals. And so I think that kind of played a big role. But you're right. I mean, the defense seemed like it was ready for the triple option. Even, in years past, Air Force hasn't had to throw the ball. They can get a lot of yards. And so I think it was a great design by the defensive staff that put a great game plan together, and it was executed perfectly by the defense, and not just the usual stars. Mercury Swaim had a great game. A lot of guys stepped up besides Eck and Brawley and Newby for this game. And I think that was key for the defensive effort.
You mentioned there's some highlights. Eric Moulton, our producer, will run, but you mentioned Mercury Swaim, and he did have a good. There's in the red zone here that Jack Lane, the Lobos' first touchdown. We mentioned this too. Air Force finished with 48 rushes for 100 yards, and you mentioned how bad did they miss their normal starting quarterback? And they had to go to their fullback who played quarterback for most of the game. You mentioned their timing on the passing game, which they used the running game to set that passing game up, and they just didn't have a lot of success in the passing game. But how much did they miss their normal starting quarterback?
Well, I think he was missed because again, as effective as the triple option is, one of the things that makes it effective is you start focusing in on the run, and then pretty soon your secondary starts creeping up, and that's when they hit you with a deep one over the top. And I think as you saw a few passes, unless the guy was wide open, I think as long as the Lobos were disciplined, they didn't have to worry about that too much with that quarterback. And so I think, again, when they turned into their third string quarterback, who had started, I guess, the first couple games of the season, they were a little bit more effective in moving the ball, having a little bit of that threat. But by then, again, the Lobos are up 17, 14 points. And so Air Force is not a come-from-behind team. So I think that gave the Lobos an advantage through the course of the game.
Very good point there about Air Force not being – they're used to being ahead. And one of the things that the announcer said on while I was watching the replay on CBS the other night was Air Force had long drives. They ate up a lot of clock, but didn't come away with a lot of touchdowns. They came away with field goals. I thought that was important too. New Mexico's bend but don't break defense and was able to keep the Falcons out of the end zone all night. I thought that was a big key right there, Greg.
Yeah, they had a 19-play drive that resulted in 3 points, and then they had a 13-play drive in the second half that resulted in no points, again, because they're behind and field goals aren't going to cut it. And so it reminded me of the 2004 Emerald Bowl when Navy uses triple option to chew up the entire fourth quarter. I think they had a 26-play, 94-yard drive in that game that also resulted in a field goal. But it chewed up so much time, and Navy was ahead that doomed the Lobos in that game. And so, that was the thing, that the Lobos got the lead. They played fantastic offensive football for 18 minutes of that first half, and that got them the lead, and that got them the cushion they needed to play the type of game that made Air Force play catch-up, and that was huge as well.
Taking advantage of their short fields. I thought Keyshawn James Newby was real. You mentioned Mercury Swain, Jackson Eck, getting up the field and making Air Force make decisions. They were behind the sticks. Once they got behind the sticks, behind the chains, it's an uphill battle because, as you mentioned, Air Force is built to run the ball down your throat and be in second and short, third and one. And instead, in the first half, they spent a lot of times being behind the chains. So I thought New Mexico's defense in the first half was up. And in the second half, they gave up some yards and some long drives, but they did not get in the end zone, which I thought New Mexico's someone mentioned that we got a comment. New Mexico's scheme on defense was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, 161 yards of total offense. I like it. The only bad thing, and it was not a bad thing, but I was hoping that the Lobos would keep Air Force under 100 because they have the nation's current leading streak with 96 games, maybe I guess it's 97 now with the Lobo game, of rushing for 100 yards or more per game. Lobos held them to 110. And really, if the game might have been a little closer, Air Force might have dropped back a little bit more there at the end. Lobos might have got a couple sacks and gotten that total back under 100. So that was maybe just the one thing that you kind of hope for in that game. But holding Air Force to 161 yards, that is fantastic, because even when the Lobos were competitive with Air Force in the Rocky Long years and beating them at home, those games were 38-31. I remember Bob Davie beat them in Dallas 40-35. So they were high-scoring games that took place between Air Force and UNM. And so to hold Air Force to 3 points, and I mentioned it in my game story, that's the lowest output that UNM has held Air Force ever. The previous low was 6 points. I think that was in 1961 or 62. So to hold Air Force to 3 points, and we know, Air Force was 3-7 coming in, but still with the number 3 rushing offense in the country, you're going to expect Air Force to score more points than that.
But boy, I'll tell you what, you just mentioned that is huge. New Mexico, Gwen Henry, the coach, I don't think the New Mexico hasn't won 5 games at home since Gwen Henry, who then Marv Levy, had won some games at home, and Marv Levy coached New Mexico back in 1958. Of course, Marv Levy, the former Buffalo Bills coach, is now 100 years old. So there's a lot of, he just turned 100 about, a couple months ago. And
right.
So there's a lot of things that are happening for a first time here. And, of course, we'll get into this a little bit later, Greg. New Mexico facing off against San Diego State this Friday at 1:30 p.m. at University Stadium, and what is the biggest game in November that New Mexico has played, I think, since 2016. You were talking to Frank Mercogliano, UNM Sports Information Director, you and I both on the way out of the press conference today. A lot of excitement around the press conference, but we'll, Greg, I wanted to ask you this. Greg, before the season started, UNM's running game was, when they signed Scott Ray Humphrey, he only got 1 carry on Saturday. I was thinking their running game was just going to be, and it has been. It's been very good. Not the road grade type that we thought, but in spots, very effective. Here and there. It wasn't the like I said, the consistent 150 yards a game. But like I said, it brings me to my next question. Jack Lane. Now, I remember asking Coach Eck before the season. I said, "Hey, Coach, what kind of runner is Jack? What kind of runner is he going to be?" We had Devin Dampier last year, and Devin Dampier is probably one of the best running quarterbacks we've ever seen. We only had him here for 1 season, but Lane picks his spots. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he'll find an alley. And I thought his running all season long, especially on Saturday, he'll tuck and run. How important? Well, he's not the fastest. How important has his running been to New Mexico this season?
Well, I'll tell you what, those first 2 drives where they scored touchdowns, he converted, I think, 3 third-down plays on scrambles. And the first touchdown, in fact, was on a 12-yard scramble when he couldn't find any receivers open. So, and I don't know if I gave him enough credit, but I thought that was probably the key to the game. Again, the Lobos able to get ahead by 2 scores early to make Air Force one-dimensional. That was critical. And it was really all the credit to Jack Lane for tucking the ball and running and getting those first downs, moving the sticks that allowed the Lobos to get those first 2 touchdowns, get that cushion. Air Force stiffened up after that, and there wasn't a lot of running range. I know Lobstein came in and did some damage too with his rushing, but really Lane's rushing there, especially those first 2 drives, set the tone for the game for UNM to play the kind of defense they played for 4 quarters.
Another comment there. I don't think they were prepared for the quarterback the Air Force used in the second half of UNM's defense, and that's probably true. They weren't. The Air Force got some yards. We mentioned that though. They got yards, bend but don't break. They didn't get in the end zone. But I think back to Jack Lane, Greg. Second half drop off on defense still showed bend not break. What we just said. Back to Jack Lane. Now I remember watching him in preseason, and I thought, okay, in practice we went out to practice a couple of times, and I wasn't like overwhelmed. But the guy is a leader, man. He makes Keegan Johnson has been his number 1 target. Dorian Thomas at tight end. Cam Keith had a good game at tight end. But if you look at it, Miller or Smith, they have 2 other receivers. They haven't really established like a solid number 2. But he's made use of his tight ends and his running backs. Again, they talked about Coach Eck and his formations. He makes the best use of his personnel. But I got to tell you, as the season has gone on, I've been more and more impressed with Jack Lane as the quarterback and as a leader. Ned James had told me earlier in the year, the Lobo color commentator, that if the linemen get in trouble and they have to run, he ran with them. If the receivers got in trouble, he runs with them. So I think his leadership has been – and you look at the runs he's gone on, Greg, there's a couple of times that he's run, And I'm thinking, oh, my God, he's going to get smashed, man. And somehow he doesn't. And he runs straight up. A couple of times he hasn't slid and has taken some hits. And a couple of times those other dudes got hit, got hurt, not him. So he's been very durable. And I've been more and more as the season goes on. I've been very impressed with his play and his leadership.
Absolutely. And I think, from the first game against Michigan, where you saw how many hits he took in that game and kept getting up and getting back. And so he's a tough son of a gun. And I think the one thing that, as the seasons progressed, the 3 losses, he threw interceptions in those games, 3 interceptions, I think, in each of the losses. And so what he's kind of morphed into now is, making sure he's not putting the ball in danger, and realizing that the Lobo defenses, especially the last few weeks, have been outstanding. So just taking care of the football, moving the chains at opportune times, playing error-free, and that's kind of been the formula for the Lobo success through the vast majority of this 5-game winning streak that they have. And like you said, Jack Lane, probably not the gaudiest numbers for a quarterback, but right now he's doing exactly what they need him to do for the team to be successful. Not
turning the ball over. Ned James always talks about that. 66% passer. I'm very impressed by him. And again, not the guy that's going to jump off at the page and say, oh my God, he runs the fastest. Look at that cannon arm. He makes the plays that they need. I've been more impressed with him as the season has gone on, and UNM has won. Lane's decision to run here late shows him maturing. First half of the year, he would have forced a pass. I think that's a great point by Steve Singletary, who's one of our loyal watchers of our show. I think that's all very true there. I got to go back to Lobenstein, quarterback James Lobenstein, who during the week, Greg, I read this in the paper, that he was questionable to even play. Coach Eck said that they weren't sure. He had a crack in his knee, man, and they were like, okay, the doctor said no. He kept working, he kept practicing, and the doctor all of a sudden cleared him, man. And so he ran 8 times for 44 yards, and it looked like earlier in the week he may not play. How important were those yards, and how important has he been as a 1-2 punch with quarterback Jack Lane? How important has he been?
Oh, I think, the biggest credit to the offensive coaching staff was to find a role for Lobstein. Because, early in the season, like you said, Lane is not going to jump off as an athletic quarterback when they needed tough yards on short yardage situations. Early in the season, they weren't getting them until they started incorporating Lobstein in there. And so for him to return, I'm sure was an emotional boost to the team because, like you said, not sure he's going to play. And then he's out there toughing it out for 8 carries, 44 yards. And then, his yards were critical too because they, again, allowed the Lobos to keep drives alive. They weren't overly productive in the second half, but it gave their defense a little bit of a blow after the 19-play drive and the 13-play drive that Air Force had. He comes in, especially on that last field goal drive, kind of took him. Lane started off that drive. He took him the rest of the way. They got a field goal out of it, put it back to a 3-possession game, was critical, gave the defense the rest to go the rest of the way. And so his contribution has been invaluable. And again, I credit the coaching staff for, putting your playmakers in positions to make plays rather than just having one quarterback, utilizing him and getting him involved in the game plan as well.
There was one carry, Greg, I don't know if you remember, that he looked like he was down initial contact. They kept moving the pile. I think he got about 8 or 10 yards, one of those tough, physical, dirty runs. Hard for Air Force football to compete in today's environment. They do not allow any NIL, which puts them at a huge disadvantage. That's from John Romero. And he's right about that. Air Force does not. They don't get anything like that. And they still compete, for as well as they can. But that's a very good point. But back to Lobstein, I remember I know you remember that run, Greg, where they kept moving the pile. And it's like that guy's legs when Coach Eck describes that, he wasn't going to play. The guy's a gamer, man. He's a gamer. And I think, when back in the day when we talked about Rocky Long, tough playing on a cracked bone, that kind of toughness is inspirational. And that's absolutely true. we talked about Rocky Long, Greg, some of the UNM's best days as a football program. And, Coach Long, to me, is the best Lobo football coach we've ever had here. And I thought at that time the team took on his personality. At that time, Coach Long was still lifting weights with those dudes in the weight room, man, and outlifting a lot of those guys. He was. Rocky was you remember him playing quarterback here in the Wishbone offense with Sam Scarber and Fred Henry. I remember listening to Mike Roberts, man, when he played here, played cornerback in the Canadian League, was tough, man. Used to play in basketball in some small man's tournaments in town, man. Just missed playing against him. I already could rebound the heck out of the ball. But I thought UNM at that time took on his personality. Very tough defensively, tough physically. He used to say that. When you play the Lobos, you're going to know you've been hit. So I think in Coach Eck, I think the team has taken on a lot of his personality. Now, Coach Eck is not going to lift weights with guys and things like that. But as far as being personable, approachable, and a coach of all three units, offense, defense, he's got some great coordinators too. Let's give them credit. And special teams, I think Coach Eck he's done a fantastic job here in his first season.
Well, and the one thing that I think we also need to give him credit for is that just gambling, go for broke mentality that I think his team has taken on. And so when you see him do fake punts or go for it on 4th and 1 on their 30 or 40 and make it, I think that's the personality the team takes on, that, hey, we're not afraid of the situation. I think we saw that from the get-go at Michigan, and he kind of mentioned it in the press conference today, right? Where he said, hey, they got down 14-0, threw an interception. Defense comes out there and limits them to a field goal. That was one of the first indications that he thought that he might have a team that was going to match what he was preaching to them. And so that is kind of the thing that it seems like no matter what the situation, especially in these last 6-7 games, they don't care what it is, especially on defense. They're out there to do a job and stop the other team. And so I think that, as much as anything, is, adversity. There's no such thing in the game. You just go to the next play. And I think that is, as much as anything, like you said, all the personal things, doing things the right way. But I think that has had a big impact on the team as well, where if your coach has that much faith in you, that you want to, he believes in you, that makes the team believe and want to run through a brick wall for him. And we saw it, we've seen their best football, certainly against Utah State, and I think this week against Air Force.
I think it's been a continuation of, since they beat Utah State, of better football every week. And maybe Saturday's victory could have been more. They left some points on the table for sure. Questionable 4th and 5 call early in the first half, where that's not going to be Lane's game. Is throwing a go route on 4th and 5. What Rocky never had is to retain assistants. Lobo needs to up the pay for the whole staff, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Greg, we're going to move on from Air Force. I think that was a big win. UNM winning 8 games for the first. Chris Pettis was coming up, so stay tuned, please. We're going to be having Chris Pettis from ABC Basketball on here in just a few minutes. So thanks for the question, and he will be on in just a few. But Greg, this is the first meaningful football game in November since 2016. How big is it's against San Diego State, coached by Sean Lewis, 9-2, 6-2 in the conference for a chance, and we'll get to the scenarios here in a minute for maybe potentially New Mexico to play in a conference championship. A couple of things have to happen, but how big of a game is this on Friday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. University Stadium?
Well, I'll give you a preview right now, Ed, of what I'm going to put in my preview. I think this is the Rocky Long Bowl. And what I mean by that is in 2008, Rocky's last year as coach at the UNM, the Lobos beat San Diego State 70-7. And as a result of that, San Diego State got rid of their coach. Rocky happened to go, be part of the staff as a defensive coordinator. And 2 years later, he takes over as head coach. And ever since then, San Diego State has been a force to be reckoned with in the Mountain West. And so Jason X has kind of resurrected that Rocky Long style kind of, grassroots, hard-nosed football team. And so, this is huge. It's, a chance for the Lobos to go to a conference championship game for the first time since 1997. If the cards go right, they could actually host that game and have a 7th game a week from Saturday if they can take care of business against San Diego State and things fall the right way. And so, yeah, I mean, this is like we talked about, is we're usually on to talking about Lobo basketball and how the football team is going to send off the seniors. And so that's not the case this year. Now, last year we got a taste of it when the Lobos had a chance to go to a bowl game in their last game on the road at Hawaii and fell short. But now we're talking about a conference championship. It's a completely different animal. So that makes the game as big as any that I can remember.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. My whole family's going out. We're all going out on Friday to be fans. I sat with you in the press box. I enjoyed watching the game with you. I really did, because you and I have, I'd ask you this or we'd say that. Hey, good play there. We can't be fans, really. I mean, I can just tap you on the leg, say, hey, Greg, you see that? Because we can't really cheer in the press box. But I also want to make sure we remind our listeners, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and our podcast on Spotify. My son, Nick Nunez, and Eric Moulton did a podcast last night breaking down UNM basketball, their win over Mississippi State on Saturday, and their upcoming game tomorrow night against Alabama State, the Pit. Please don't forget about that, 7 p.m. I think my son and I would definitely be there for sure. But, okay, Greg, we're going to wrap this up in just a few minutes. I got 2 more questions for you. Describe the scenario about what ifs and Boise State losing to Utah State. You and I walked out with Frank Macagliano in the elevator today, and he was explaining some scenarios to us. And to go ahead and tell us about the scenarios, what has to happen for UNM to play in that conference championship game.
What I find most ironic about this whole situation, that is, Bronco Mendenhall actually has a chance to put UNM in the championship game. He did his first part when Utah State beat Fresno State this past weekend. And so now Utah State plays Boise State. And so I think, job one is right. The Lobos have to beat San Diego State. If they lose, even in all the other scenarios, if the other 2 lost teams lose and there's a logjam, it goes by computer rankings. And for whatever reason, the computers don't like UNM. And here's the example I'll give. And I gave it at the press conferences. UNLV is 9-2. Lobos are 8-3. The difference is that the Lobos played a ranked Michigan team and lost that game. They have 7 common opponents, UNLV and UNM. UNM has better results in 5 of the 7 games. They beat UNLV head-to-head. But because of that loss to Michigan, they're being penalized because for some reason UNLV is ahead in the computer rankings, which is key because what we really as fans need to hope for is a Utah State victory over Boise State, because that virtually guarantees a Lobo appearance in the championship game if they take care of business and beat San Diego State on Friday. And they could actually end up hosting that championship game in that scenario. But if you start getting ties, if Boise State beats Utah State and you have a 3-way tie with them and San Diego State, you go to computer rankings. If there's a 4-way tie with UNLV winning, you also go to computer rankings, and then you're relying on UNM's win over San Diego State, elevating them over 3 programs to be in that championship game. And right now, as it stands, of the 4 teams between San Diego State, Boise State, UNLV, and New Mexico, UNM is ranked lowest in the computer rankings of the 4 teams. And so they do need some help. Or if they somehow beat San Diego State by 50 points, which is not going to happen. But those are only ways. So the best thing we can do is become Bronco Mendenhall fans. I think they start a half hour after the Lobo game and make sure that they take care of business at Boise State after the Lobos take care of business against San Diego State.
Oh, man. Well said, Greg. And we asked Frank Macagliano. He thinks Utah State will beat Boise State, and, we'll have our fingers crossed. And, again, encourage everybody to go out to the stadium. Coach Eck had said this. He wants 30,000. And let's hope he gets 33, 35. We were there when they had 37,000 against New Mexico State. My wife and I went as fans, and I had fun. Had a lot of fun. So I think this is a great moment for UNM football. We didn't expect this. I don't know anybody that could say that, hey, we said UNM was going to play for a championship possibly, and have 8 wins in November. I don't think anybody could have seen that with 73 new players, a new coach, things like that. One more question, Greg, and we'll let you go. Hey, Arch, if I don't tell you this enough, man, we're so glad you're on the team, man. Really, you've done a great job in writing articles for us, and we're looking forward to whatever else you're going to bring. It helps strengthen our team, and Mark Smith's also going to be a part of our team, and it just helps us tremendously with the background that you both have. One more question, Arch. Coach Eck has done a great job here at UNM in his first season. I was telling Kenny Thomas, I was on with Kenny Thomas today on his radio show Unfiltered. It's nervousness for me because, you're looking beyond, Kenny said, hey, we're always looking at the other side. We want to know what's going to happen. And I guess for me, it's nervousness because you said this to me today. UNM, can they keep hitting home runs? If he does leave, we hope he stays for 10 more years. But how likely do you think it is that Coach Eck is still the football coach in 2026 here at the University of New Mexico?
That's a great question. A few weeks ago when I thought, when they became bowl eligible, I thought maybe the one school that could lure him away after one season was Wisconsin. And when Wisconsin announced that Luke Fickell was going to be back next year, despite the struggles they've had this year, I thought Lobo Nation was relatively safe. But now, especially if, they get to the Mountain West Conference Championship game and win it, and then if they win a bowl game and be the first Lobo team to win 11 games ever, there are going to be some schools coming after him. And so not to tip our hand, but I have a little conversation with a certain athletic director tomorrow to see what he's going to do to keep Jason Eck around. So after I talk to him, another article he can look for is what UNM might be doing to keep him in the face of the success, which again, that's the double-edged sword, right? The thing is, New Mexico does great in football. Not only the players now, but the coaching staff is going to be looked at by other schools. And so that's a great question, Ed, and I wish I had an answer. I was more sure when I thought they were going to be a 7-8 win team. But now the way they've been playing, if they can beat San Diego State, the great thing is this year could be a magical year. It already is a magical year. But then, you'd have to start, biting your fingernails and seeing what's going to happen in the offseason.
But I think all those things are fair points. And, we definitely hope that, that he's going to stay. I know that, you mentioned all these scenarios. And I think the other thing, we have no control. There's no control over it. That's it. All we can do is, watch them, see what happens. We want the Lobos to succeed, and we want them to keep winning. And Coach Eck is, for a first-year coach, Joe Morrison went 10-1. I think that was his, third year, third year when he was here at UNM. They mentioned
and Ed, he did say today, he reiterated that, he still sees himself here at a long time. Nobody's contacted him. He hasn't talked to any other schools. And so, but, rightfully so, the focus is on San Diego State. So, we did a podcast a few weeks ago and asked him. I don't think that stance has changed. But again, I just think because of the success, more schools are going to come after him. So
that's again, this one more quick comment. When other schools see a coach that has turned a program that has not been in a bowl game since 2016 and to a potentially 11-win season, people are going to be interested. I don't think there's any question about that. Greg Archuleta, Pitt Press beat writer for Lobo football. Hey, Greg, man, always a pleasure being on with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ed. That's a good conversation.
And we'll look forward to your Lobo football preview here in a couple of days. Don't forget UNM versus San Diego State, 1:30 p.m. University Stadium on Friday afternoon. We'll be back after these messages with ABC Prep coach Chris Pettis.
Because Capital Ford is celebrating 60 years in business, we're holding a very special signature sales event where we're rolling out our strongest offers of the year on every new Ford car, truck, and SUV in stock, like a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Lease today for just $399 a month or 0% APR for 60 months, plus no payments for 90 days on a new 2025 Ford F-150. But hurry, this signature sales event is for a limited time at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Welcome back to the Pit Press Live. I'm your host for this evening, Ed Nunez, Eric Moulton behind the scenes producing. And as promised, we've got with us ABC Prep National Coach Chris Perez. Chris, sorry for the wait, but we're really glad to have you on.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad you guys have me. It was a long weekend. We actually have a good break coming up. And, we talked as coaches, usually Thanksgiving, we don't have much, but in the prep world, we kind of want to we have some kids out of state, so we try to make sure we have Thanksgiving and Christmas off for the kids to go back home if they need to. But it is a much needed break. But then after this break, we're hitting it hard December for some games coming up.
Well, you're part of our new collaboration with ABC Prep with Brandon Mason, who's the executive director and coach. You also a former Lobo who played with Coach Steve Alford, and I've had you on as a color commentator, had you on a couple of other shows, so. You and I are real familiar with each other, and people have been waiting. Chris, I'll tell you, man, we got some comments on our last show, and where's Chris Perez? So yeah, for all those waiting, here you are.
Yeah. So it's my guys. I told our guys to tune in, and some of our coaches and families. So I think it's just been exciting times. Even for my family, they've been really interested in the prep world and what I'm doing, and even I texted Coach Alvin for his birthday and, just appreciate what he's instilled in me, because that's what I'm instilling in these kids. And I'm always staying in contact with my high school coach and some of my former teammates. So it's just, it's the Lobo family, everyone's a Lobo. So, we're all trying to, support each other.
Well, you got a couple of Lobos, Coach Mason, Brandon Mason, played at New Mexico State, coached at New Mexico State and UNM. He's the only guy I know besides former Lobo Jimmy Taylor. You wouldn't remember him. He actually transferred from New Mexico State to New Mexico. The only other two guys that I remember doing that, you've got Reese Gary on the staff, and you've got Coach J.R. Giddings, one of the Lobos drafted by the Boston Celtics in the late first round several years ago. So you mentioned you got a lot of Lobo family there, and you're getting it done with ABC Prep. And again, we're glad to collaborate with you as the Pit Press will be having some of these shows on regularly, and we look forward to it. Chris, you guys won a big tournament last week, and it was big news. And for those that don't know what ABC Prep does, well, I want to get into the scholastic part later because I talked to you earlier today,
Right.
and I don't want people to just think you guys are just going playing tournaments.
Right.
There's another component to it which is very important. But tell us about the tournament that you guys won last week. Coach Mason put it out there as one of your biggest wins as a program in years.
Yeah, I mean, so Dream City Christians, they've been doing this for a long time, and they've been a top 25 national ranked program for a while, very well respected. And since I've been here for 3 years, I just kind of observe how they move, how they operate. Very professional program, and for our guys to beat them, it was going to take a lot, and it just starts with the belief. So I think our guys, what I'm trying to instill in our guys is like, man, just because we're a young group or we're a young team, whatever, is we could get anywhere. We could sneak games. If we've seen it in March Madness. We've seen it in college basketball all the time. And, I always put 3 to 4 keys on defense and offense before a game. And both on offense and defense, I said we have to be physical. I think if we're bumping cutters, if we're boxing out, we're setting hard screens, we're blowing up screens on defense, that's going to wear on teams. And, Dream City, they were getting the shots they wanted. They just weren't falling. And I think it was just a credit to our defense. We were just playing hard, and it was a next play mentality as well. If we didn't get too up or down, we went to halftime up 2. And honestly, that could have been enough for our guys. Like, man, we were going toe to toe up till half, and but they responded after half and still played at a high level. It just looked like a college level game. I mean, the way both teams played, so like to me, it was the biggest win in my coaching career, but it was the first time like a group actually like executed the game plan and stepped up to the challenge of being physical. And then after that, after emotional win, as we all know, you're kind of susceptible to losing the next one. So that was our first game on Thursday. And then, the next 3 games we play against teams that, aren't as good as Dream City, but, so we play a Bella Vista team that's still pretty good. We win by 28. And then the next 2 games, play against Skyline Prep and Sequoia National. And we barely win those by 1 possession. And I asked our guys, are they better than Dream City? They're like, of course not. It's just but we found a way to win those games. And, we've dealt with some adversity already, some injury stuff. So we have DJ Barnett. He's Tony Snell's brother. He's been out with the ankle injury. Sir Mister, one of our players from NorCal, he's been dealing with the fever. And, Brandon Jr. actually was dealing with that same fever, and he actually missed the Ontario or the Canada trip. So we went 3-1 without him there. So it's just next man up mentality. Carter Basquez, before that, he had his foot or so. We're just whatever we got, we're just going to keep fighting. We're going to keep dealing with this adversity and just keep progressing, getting better.
And it sounds, those are challenges. Every team you mentioned, it's a new challenge. Every team's a different challenge. And concepts, you mentioned concepts, bust the cutter, box out, be physical. I've got a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Rich Harbin, who just took over the Atrisco Heritage girls program. And Rich, former head coach at Valley, he's coached at Sandia. But he told me that. I said, hey, coach, how you looking? We have to explain basketball concepts to them. Standing, positioning on defense, shoot your guns, relationship between man and ball, all the things you talked about. And those things you mentioned, coach, being physical, the concept on the court, communication, right. All the things, those are so important, man. And coaching makes a huge difference. It really does. And I'm excited. I told Coach Mason that I was coming back from Boston, and I caught him and a couple of guys coming back on the plane, Denver to Albuquerque. And Brandon Mason Jr. was sitting in a seat above, a couple of rows above me, and he's talking about UCLA cuts and on the ball defense. And I'm thinking, he sounds just like his dad, man. He speaks the language. So you got these kids speaking that language. And I've got to ask you this, Coach. It was a great tournament. How you played for Coach Alford, who played for his dad, Sam Alford, in high school, and then played for the General, Bob Knight, in college, winning a national championship and a gold medal. What defensive philosophies do you take from Coach Alford in teaching ABC Prep?
Well, it's really starts with guarding the ball. If you can't guard the ball, you can't play. That's what coach always taught us. And I think, obviously with DJ Smith as our 6'10", 6'11" big that can erase shots. He actually took a visit to Southern Utah, and so we were out without him on Saturday, and our guys were like, "Oh, there's no rim protector behind us to get there." So I think it's really just staying in front of the ball, and also rotations are huge. I mean, your man defense should look like a zone, because everybody's in spot. You're not, if you're a pass away, 2 passes away, you're helping. And it's also a give and take, especially in 2025. It is hard to stay in front of people, but it's what you give up and what you take away. We don't like giving up middle, and we don't like giving up paint touches. When I was told that, in high school and college, I took it a step further. I said, I'm not letting you get inside this 3-point line. Because if you don't get inside the 3-point line, you don't get inside in the paint. So just trying to give them these little things that gave me an edge as a player. Sending them sideline, baseline, send them up. If, we don't trap uphill, we trap downhill, because if you trap uphill, the ball handler can see where it's coming from and knows where to throw it. But if we trap, where we send them up sideline, we make him turn, and then he surprisingly sees another defender. And then you have defenders in the sideline and half court. So it's just it's a give and take. It's a chess match. And the thing is, we talk about offensive chemistry. You got to have defensive chemistry. And I think against Dream City, we really saw that because we were rotating well. Like if we got beat, we helped each other. Like we helped the helper. And rebounding wise, we were in good position. They really get open shots. Good teams are. But I felt like they always sensed like, man, someone's going to fly around and beat. Like they just felt like there were 7 guys on the court. So I think it's just it's just competing every day. When we do our 4-on-4 shell defense every day, we don't keep track of how many shots we made. We keep track of stops. We keep track of deflections, and red versus white. Whoever wins that after the 15 minutes doesn't have to run. So. It's taking charges, it's being in position. So I've just seen this team really come to life, and I think that's really surprised some teams so far. Our defensive mindset this year, for sure.
Synergy. When you talk
Right.
about that shell drill, and I think your team has bought into that for sure. The hunger, want to get stops, get out. Let's get out and punish them in transition, score points off of their turnovers. And you mentioned the concepts that you talk about, trapping on the sideline, length, making sure there's so many concepts that you just talked about. And when you got the players, there's no question about it. ABC Prep has definitely, but they have to be coached. You can have all the talent in the world, but if they're not coached, right? I think coaching, and then you're getting them ready for the next level. Many of these young players are, you mentioned Brandon Mason Jr. and DJ Smith amongst 2 of them, and there's others. Mm-hmm. But Brandon Mason Jr., I believe, has 6 offers already so far?
I think it's up in the double digits. You got that. I mean, it keeps going up there. Because there's some also he's not really talking whatever, but he's still going to make a decision. But no, his growth too, his mature. Like, and my biggest challenge to me, and the thing is, I always get to challenge guys, and I think that's why Brandon wanted me to come on, and he kind of really stepped back and let me coach, because he knows at the next level, he's not going to be coached by his dad, and he trusts me. I was a player when Coach Mason was the video coordinator at UNM, so we've really seen eye to eye, really just communicating with all the players, but with Brandon Jr. especially. We're trying to build a leader, and we tell him all the time, leaders don't take days off. You got to show it. You got to, express it. And he's learned that, he's developing different habits. We're pushing him. Coach Giddens has come on, and, he's family, Brandon Jr.'s family. So we're on him a little harder than some of the other guys. But it's because we want the best for him. We know how talented he is. We know how good he is. And I think people see that potential. And Coach Mason, he's going to, speak highly of his son. And to these college coaches, and we're going to make sure that he delivers and he's prepared for that next level, because we see it here in this world, the social media world, all that. It's when kids get to college, especially from New Mexico, they're like, man, it's just a whole different level, whole different ball game, and that's why ABC Prep really exists. I think we really help kids understand that level. So all kids that come to us, they want to play at that level. So That's how we work them day in and day out, in the classroom, off the court, on the court. When it comes to mental performance, physical performance, strength training, conditioning, it's a grind. So we're just trying to help them and prepare for that.
I think everything you just mentioned there, especially Coach Mason knows that he can tell Brandon Jr. a lot, and sometimes he's the same guy telling him to clean his room and this and that. So sometimes Junior my son and I work together quite a bit, and I'm not coaching him. I coached him back in the day, but sometimes other voices help. Your voice, yeah. Coach Gary's voice, Coach Giddings, and those dudes are respected. You're respected, and so I think it's a big family thing there. You guys have a great staff, a great thing going at ABC Prep, and again, we're glad to collaborate with you. But Coach, we talked about this, and I wanted you to make sure, we talk about the educational component. We don't want anyone thinking, I know you don't either. Coach Mason talked about it on Kenny Thomas' show last week, Unfiltered, and I really was like, okay, I had my ear bent for that because I hadn't heard a lot about that. But talk to us about the educational component at ABC Prep. That's important for people to know.
All right. So, yeah, we partner with Gilbert Center Charter School, and it's an accelerated model, and it's online classes. So basically their math, their science, social studies. You even take elective class. They got business class on there, financial literacy. There are some really good online classes for them. And this model really helps our kids because we travel a lot. So right now my kids, they ask me, hey, can you unlock this test for me? Or can you help me give me a retake? Or, when they have an 89 in a class, I could go back and look, okay, well, let's redo this quiz or let's redo this test and get you a 90. So you could have that A, but so like that's the thing. We don't give A's. I got to earn A's. But I make sure I work, I'm, pretty patient, with these kids, because with online classes, it takes a lot of self-discipline. But every day that tells me who's behind and who's ahead. And like we try to give incentives of who's ahead. If you're 20% ahead pace, then, you just have to worry about practice, you don't have to, come to me or whatever, like checking in. But, I check their grades. I have a spreadsheet, everything with all their grades. I send it to Miss Pryor, our executive director and principal, and Mr. Jackson, our student success coach and dean of students. And we just go case by case with some of these kids. And it's really about environment too. Some of them, do they need to go back to the main campus at Senna? Which a lot of them, that's like, they tell me, okay, coach, I'll get it done. Cause they want to be around our guy, like our team. We have 4 teams with the girls team and our junior prep team. But also too, not just online school. We have great, just, sometimes it's just meetings. Sometimes it's just talking life. And we have, but Coach Green, she comes with us with Olympic experience with athletes, helping with mental performance. She has a whole curriculum. She works with all of our kids. So it's a classroom setting that she uses the whiteboard. She has them reading books. It's a big thing here. So, and we know if we're not taking care of these kids mentally, we're not helping them be sharp and with problem solving skills and critical thinking skills, they're not going to be good on the court. And I get on them all the time. I say, like, guys, if you guys don't take school seriously, when I draw up a play or whatever, like, you can't just ask ChatGPT. You can't just ask Google, hey, how do I break this double team? How do I read this screen? Like, no, you got to be able to make decisions, and within the game. So, but yeah, I think we've had a great partnership, a great staff. Mr. Roybal, our guidance counselor, he's always, answers questions for him. We have a great IEP team. With Miss Glazebrook and Mr. Burnett, Miss Adams. So our senior capstone that helps our kids make sure they're ready to graduate. Miss Capadonna. So it's been a great team. Small school, but I personally, as an educator, I've loved small schools just because it is another family feel. I believe in that, and even Miss Price, she'll call me like, this is the school dad, school aunt, school grandma, whatever, and. So I think it's just been good, where I can just, kind of put my stamp on it. And I can communicate with the staff and just say, like, all right, I'm telling kids when they're behind, I'm telling kids, they got to get on, like, and it's just that kind of push. It's just like, just like with coaching, it really, sometimes when I'm teaching, I'm coaching, and when I'm coaching, I'm teaching, it works hand in hand. So, sometimes you just got to coach these kids up and make sure they get it done and see the light at the end where, they can graduate, and these guys could work at their own pace. Honestly, I have kids almost completed with their classes, and they could be done before Thanksgiving, and then they don't have to worry about their second semester till January 7th. And that's nice too, because we have a lot of stuff coming up. We have Kentucky coming up, then we have Vegas coming up, then we have Dallas coming up. So usually, when this is, mid-December, you're in final mode. You're playing tough games. I mean, we used to play New Mexico State during finals week, and that was tough in itself. But if you could control that, where we play in the TART Classic 16th through 18th, I told our guidance counselor, I said, hey, make sure our target date, set it for our students, our ABC students, December 12th, because that's the Friday before we leave. That way they don't have to worry about it. It's a hard deadline for them to finish their classes. So like I said, it's all environment. I've been in the classroom. I've taught every subject. When I was at Legacy, again, small school, so I taught history, PE, math, science. Really, because you just become a manager, and you make sure your kids are in the right environment and working in where they could be focused. And we have a classroom set up for them. We have a whiteboard to use. We use it for film as well, but we also use it if I need to explain something, and also too, as Senate, we have high dosage tutoring too. So I do my best to help them, because that's my mindset. I want to problem solve. I want to figure it out with them. But if I can't, then we have other tutors at Senna for them. So everything's covered for them academically for sure.
You mentioned competition basketball wise, which is a given, right? They're going to compete, and I like the skull sessions, man. Breaking it down, screens, talk. Same thing with offense, cut, execute. Take your time setting picks. Wait for the guy to set the pick before you cut off of him. Right. All the whole thing. So I think but the education thing to me is so important. It really is. But we're going to compete on the national level. You just want a big tournament, but we're going to compete here in the classroom. And if you don't compete in the classroom, sit your butt at the end of the bench. And I love that, because there's got to be goals. There has to be. Right. Now, you and I talked earlier today, Coach, and a lot of these young men are going to get a chance to play at the next level. That's great. And young women. Now, I don't want to forget about your girls program, because you got some fantastic players there too. But you're getting them ready on both ends. Get ready, right. Basketball-wise. They're getting the best, basketball education, but they're also getting what I think is most important, right? Financial literacy. You mentioned some of the classes. You've done history, math, science. All those are so important. We've got to compete on the floor, but if you can't compete in the classroom, man, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to be part of the program, which I think is, again, the education is way more important. My wife and I sent my son to St. Pius, and I'm glad we did. He's an attorney, works for the Department of Justice. He did better than me, man. So that's always the goal. So right. I think you're setting up these young women and young men for some great success on the court. And sometimes things may not work out on the court, but in the classroom, they'll be ready. And that's what's more important. A couple more questions, Coach. We're going to let you go. But I did some PA for the first Enchantment Classic, which La Cueva got to play in, Albuquerque High, Manzano, Highland, and Rio Rancho. And I thought it was important because a lot of times they scrimmage each other, which is good. But this time they got to get outside the box and play with the shot clock, man. And I'm looking and watching very closely to see how they're going to navigate a shot clock, because they don't. Coach, New Mexico's one of the last states to accept shot clocks, so that's probably 10 years away still. I would say 5 to 10 years. You know how New Mexico is, and I love New Mexico. Yeah. But talk a little bit about the first Enchantment Classic.
Man, I think it was good for both sides. I know obviously, La Cueva, we jumped on them early. And they were missing some guys from football. But they still kept fighting. I told our guys too, like, these are well-coached high school teams, and you can't look down on them. I mean, we see it all the time happen in the college world too, where, teams lose guaranteed, games where they lose against D2 teams or lower D1s. So I told our guys, like, and the thing is, we're not outcome based either. We're here to get better. So, like, every possession matters, because we're going to place against a lot of teams that every possession we're going to have to fight and play all, we played 36 minutes. It's 4 quarters, 9 minutes. And, so we have to learn how to do that. We have to condition ourselves, and have that mindset. And then we played Rio Rancho, which was at Rio Rancho, and it felt like a game in February. It was a team that, obviously with ABC Prep, people want to, prove that they could compete against us. And I told our guys, like, it's their home gym. They're going to shoot better. They shot a great percentage. They were playing well. They competed. But credit to our guys to come back. They came back and won that game on their home court, and just finding ways to win. And that's just the nature of basketball. Sometimes it's just any given night. But my practices are very, very competitive. Every single drill is competitive. You lose, you run. Whether we're doing shooting drills, offensive breakdown, defensive breakdown, it's competitive. So you could probably guess how intense our practices get every single day. Diving on loose balls just to get the point for whatever it is. And sometimes we do joint practices with our team because we have our post grad team. We have our it's our varsity team, but it's our, quote unquote JV team. We compete. And the thing is sometimes our national team loses some drills, and the other teams get hyped up. We heard Rio Rancho in their locker room. They were pretty, hyped up, and they should be. They showed out. I mean, they probably haven't had many practices either. And they play well. But in the event in general, I think it was good for all sides just to show the relationship. Like, we're not competing against NMAA. Like, we're just giving kids another option. We're giving them, if they want to play on a national level, they want to compete at a national level, get some exposure, play with the shot clock, because that's what the next level has you do. That's what we have for them. And, I think, this has definitely been needed. And it's been built by, Coach Mason, and then also my former, my teammates and former Lobos we're here, believing in the mission. And we believe we're in a great spot because we've all played at that level. I didn't play professionally, but that's where I'm a sponge with JR and Coach Gary and Coach Mason. I'm like, man, wow, the professional level is a whole different level. And I'm trying to be a sponge about how I can help our guys, or they could speak to our guys about that. Cause like some of them obviously a lot of them want to play professionally. But the quote I always use, or the saying I always use is like, well, what happens when the ball stops bouncing for you? Because it's got to stop bouncing. I mean, look, LeBron's almost, he's going to be 41 and he's still going, but we could see it's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. And it's what you do after that. It's how you build your character, how the relationships you build along the way, the financial literacy part, because people are going to be after your money, especially in the NIL era. So we're just trying to teach a kid on all aspects. I mean, it's hard to coach kids in this generation and in the landscape of it, but we can't, there's old school ways. Obviously we teach respect, we teach being on time, but we have to understand where these kids are coming from and what they value and what we got to warn them about, because obviously money looks good, but is it the right money? Are they going to treat you right? Whatever. There's so many aspects that, with teenage kids, they got to make these decisions. Yeah. When it used to be just, all right, after college, then it's about money, but now it is. So, and that's how we're motivating kids. Like, hey, if you rebound and block shots, you could be a 6-figure college player, somewhere. So, again, like I said, we're just continuing to help them. And thank you, Rio Rancho. Thank you, Bosky, for hosting. Great event. I hope we continue to do it and bring out other teams from, Colorado, West Texas, Arizona, and just make it a good event. Coach Macy, he does a great job of his hospitality. We have a great staff around him. We're all helping. We have about 14, 15 coaches / staff member, whatever. There's media guys, there's fundraising people. We have a great group. So we're always ready to do something different, do something new, and bring this basketball community together.
And I thought it was a great event. Like I said, I got to be a little part of it and watch some really good basketball. And man, like you said, those high school teams want to prove. Right. Highland's my alma mater, and I'm part of the Highland Alumni Association. I'm the chairperson of the Highland Sports Hall of Fame, and coach. I played at Highland and coached there. So Coach Woody lets me come and talk to the team whenever I get a chance. But those dudes played hard, man. Those you beat them on a buzzer beater. But I think one thing about it, and I told Coach Woody, he's established, and same thing with Coach Heredia at Rio Rancho, Coach Orel at La Cueva. Coach Bradella at Albuquerque High, they all do great jobs. Coach Woody has established a winning culture at Highland, and they play like someone stole something from them, man, every single time. One quick question from a viewer. He doesn't. A viewer from John Romero. Coach Pettis' ABC Prep, club ball, or something else. Explain what ABC Prep is, because not everybody knows. I'm thinking everybody knows,
right?
And not everybody does. So explain to John Romero.
Yeah, so basically, so ABC, we actually go by Albuquerque Prep in the high school set, because when we go out of state, people don't really know, like ABC, they could kind of they won't know what that acronym means. But Albuquerque, they're like, okay, ABQ Prep, you guys are from New Mexico, so like we all try to represent where we come from. So Albuquerque Prep is basically our high school season. So right now, we play in what's called the grind session. So the grind session is basically like our regular season. So whatever games we play in the grind session, that will count towards our record. And then in March, it's like a selection show. They take the top 16 teams to compete in the grind session championship, just as you would as a state title. But the ABC Spotlight, that is our AAU program. So that's the teams that go play in spring and the summer, just like any AAU team would. For that. So there are two different, types of things. It's year-round basketball. I mean, where our facility is at in Old Town, the old boys and boys club. It's small, but it has everything they need. They have a great court, great weight room. It's been updated. It's been, they have a classroom, offices. We have, a kitchen with protein powder, with protein mix and creatine mix and nutritional stuff. Sena, provides us with food as well. So, we have everything there. But just like to answer your question, it is a high school team, but we just travel. We don't necessarily play NMA teams. Now, we did this as an exhibition, as like kind of a scrimmage for the team. So our first grind session was in Canada. So that, it starts a little earlier, but we kind of get selected where to go, or Coach May said, "Oh, let's go to that one. Let's go to this one." And so we play based on, based on strength of schedule, based on record, common opponents. There is a selection committee that, says that, all right, this team deserves to be in the playoffs. But what is hard in the prep world, the challenge is, and I've talked to parents, talked to players, is it kind of lacks that, because usually a lot of the top teams that have been established for a long time, the prolific preps, Dream City, there are teams that usually dominate, and usually they're always winning every year. But I always believe, man, you just got to continue. You just got to play for championships. You got to embrace the journey to that. If you don't win, it doesn't mean you didn't learn anything. So I'm just trying to help these guys understand that it starts with the belief, and we see it in March Madness all the time. There's some teams that get on a Cinderella run, and I want us to be in that why not us mentality, where we could represent Albuquerque in the right way. And, I always tell them too, it's in hotels and restaurants and travel. Like, people are going to ask, where are you guys from? What is this? We get those questions all the time with family and everything. So hopefully I answered it. But again, it's another option for kids that want to play at the next level. There is a tuition, but we're working on, sponsorships, and how we did get a nonprofit status now. So that's really huge for us. And, we just want to help, this is their route. And we see it's even helping UNM. When you were right down the street from UNM, and they come to our gym quite a bit. And, there's some kids that we get from out of state that it didn't work out for their teams, and they want a second chance. They come here, they play well here. Maybe they're a kid from Colorado or California, and they play well. And then UNM is right down the street, like, oh, I want that guy. And they continually see them, and they play for our Lobo. So it's just a good, thing that's going on. And, obviously there's got to be people saying that it's, oh, the ABC doing this, doing that. And, again, we're just trying to help kids. At the end of the day, we just want to help kids, and we give them that option, but they have to earn it. Nothing's given here. And a lot of them that hear about, Albuquerque Prep and ABC, they come for the first. We've had kids quit in the first 2 weeks of training camp because they're like, okay, this is too much. So it is a grind. It is tough, and we tell you that straight up. And but it's something for guys that want to play at the next level.
I think you explained that very well. And there's, a lot of people didn't know, right? I think I do because I've been, around Coach Mason and talked to Coach Mason for 3-4 years, had him on several shows. So I was familiar, but I think that's a good question. You explained it well. Just before we wrap up, I just want to remind our listeners and viewers to subscribe to the YouTube channel and our podcast on Spotify. Once again, our second guest tonight was ABC Prep National Coach Chris Perez. Such a good job, CP. Appreciate your work with young people. Total game changer in the classroom and on the court. Coach Perez, once again, thanks for joining us tonight. We look forward to future collaborations with ABC Prep.
Right. Yeah. And sorry, Coach Mason just wanted me to, we are an NCAA certified school that plays at a national level. So we have everything covered, whatever it is. And, our kids, when they go to school with us, it all counts. Coach Olin was asking about Brandon Jr.'s grades, and we're able to give him a transcript and everything. So, and like you said, Ed, we compete on the court, but I haven't I tap into their competitive nature in the classroom too. They do not want to be on that behind list. I said it every day at the end of the day at 4 p.m. And Coach Mason says, if you're on that behind list, you're not traveling. So, they get on each other too. It's like, oh man, this kid's been on there for 3 days straight. Come on, let's go. Come on, pick it up. I'll help you. That's the thing. That's what it is. It's competitiveness. It's accountability in all aspects of life. And that's what we're going to need to learn as dads, as husbands, as workers. We need to learn all that in all aspects of our life. So, again, thank you, Coach, B. Mays for starting this and believing in this when it's hard, the financial part of it, the longevity of it. And, me and him, we've talked about it before, when it first was about to happen, we tried to do with Legacy, whatever. I just think the stars are aligning. After Legacy, went to Northern with Coach Giddens, and we learned how to coach together. And what I've learned too, we saw Coach Alfred and Coach Neal as players for them. They work so well together, but that's not very common, for head coaches and associate head coaches to work that close. So I think when Coach Giddens came back from China and, now we're working together, and the roles are kind of reversed, but they're really not. We both know that, we give to this game in different ways. We're both very detail oriented. I like to manage things and organize things, and Coach Giddens has played at such a high level. He could teach these guys all the little details, and they embrace it. They learn from him a lot. And obviously Coach Gary, one of the best point guards. I was a teammate of his for a year, and I just learned everything I could. And he was tough to guard in practice, but so I'm glad we're all kind of coming together. I envisioned this as a Lobo. I wanted our guys, we have so many great guys. We need to be coaching. We had such a great coach. And I think we need to get together and coach and show what we can all do at any level. I don't care if it's high school, college, prep. We have a good group here. So again, thank you, Ed, for having me on and be able to express this. And hopefully we can continue. We got a 9-game winning streak going on, so hopefully we can continue that after the Thanksgiving break.
Coach, like I said, we look forward to future collaborations, and maybe we'll get a couple players and some other coaches on from ABC Prep. Once again, Chris Perez, the national coach for ABC Prep. Thanks so much for being our guest and explaining what you guys are doing over there at ABC Prep. And we certainly wish you the best of luck in future tournaments.
All right, for sure. Thanks for having me, Ed.
Okay, you bet. For producer Eric Moulton, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next time on the Pit Press Live.